The meeting will now come to order. Pursuant to Executive Order N2920, please be advised that members of the Bell Gardens Agency will participate in today's meeting telephonically. Agency members and staff are participating from remote locations. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any agency members should have a conflict of interest virtually, please leave the room by turning off video and muting yourself. You may still keep listening to the meeting. We will now do the invocation and pledge of allegiance. And to help us with the invocation, we have Councilmember Cortez.
Thank you. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
Thank you, Councilmember Cortez, and I will go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone can please stand, face the flag, put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated, and thank you. Agency Secretary, will you please call the roll of the successor agency?
Yes, Chair. Agency members Chavez,
Present.
Cortez,
Here.
Flores,
Here.
Vice Chair Polito,
Present.
and Chair Barcena.
Present. Public participation. We will now move to the first item on the agenda. Public participation is now open. Agency Secretary, are there any public speakers?
There are no public speakers, Mayor.
If there is no objection by the agency members, I will close public participation and we will now move to the consent calendar. We have 2 items in the consent calendar. May I have a motion to approve these items?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Chavez. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Flores. We will do a roll call. Agency member Chavez,
Yes.
Cortez,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pulido,
Yes.
and a yes for myself. So motion carries and the consent calendar is approved. We will now move to public participation for non-agenda items. Public participation is now open. Agency Secretary, are there any speakers?
We have no speakers, Mayor.
Okay. Seeing none, if there's no objection by the agency members, I will now close public participation. Does any agency member wish to make any comments? If there's no objection by the successor agency, I will adjourn the successor agency meeting at 6:05 p.m. Okay, now we're going to be opening the regular city council meeting. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, April 12th, 2021, 6 p.m. regular meeting of the Bell Gardens City Council. The meeting will now come to order. Pursuant to Executive Order N2920, please be advised that members of the Bell Gardens City Council will participate in today's meeting telephonically. Council members and staff are participating from remote locations. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any city council members should have a conflict of interest virtually, please leave the room by turning off video and muting yourself. You may still keep listening to the meeting. City Clerk, will you please call the roll of the City Council?
Yes, Mayor. Council members Chavez,
Present.
Cortez,
Present.
Flores,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Polito,
Present.
and Mayor Barcena.
Present. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Now we'll move to the to the closed session report from the City Council. City Attorney, will you please give the closed session report for City Council?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The record should reflect that the City Council recessed in the closed session tonight to discuss the 3 items posted on tonight's agenda. With respect to all 3 items, the City Council received a briefing from legal counsel. Direction was given, but no final action was taken tonight in closed session. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. And now we're going to move to do the presentations. I have a proclamation here as a recognition of National Donate Life Month, which is now the month of April. We did this last year. We feel it's a extremely important thing to bring awareness to in our communities. So this is the proclamation here, and I'm going to be reading it for all of our listeners. Whereas organ, eye, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. Whereas more than 108,000 individuals nationwide and more than 21,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list. And on average, 17 people die each day while waiting. Whereas the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic, Latino, and African American communities. Whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives. Whereas donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of more than 75 others. Whereas deceased organ donors saved more than 33,000 lives last year, the most ever. Whereas any person can register to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor regardless of age and medical conditions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in recognition of National Donate Life Month, the month of April 2021 is hereby proclaimed DMV/Donate Life Month in the city of Bell Gardens. And in doing so, we encourage all Californians to check yes online or when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card at the DMV. Proclaimed this 12th day of April 2021. And I want to thank staff for putting this together for us and the council for supporting this particular proclamation. And since this is my first time doing a proclamation, just for the technicalities, do I require a vote for this? No. Okay, it's purely ceremonial. Thank you. Okay, now we will be moving to the first item on the agenda, which is public participation. And it is now open for items listed on the agenda. City Clerk, are there any speakers?
We have 0 speakers that have requested to be called, but we do have 1 email that I need to read. This email is from Mark Alamilo. Agenda item number 8. I do not live on Darwell, but support the installation of these speed bumps. The $2,500 cost to the city is a sound investment to possibly save a life. 2 months ago on my block, Gallant Street, between Ramish and Jillian, signatures were collected and submitted to the city asking for speed bumps. To this day, there has not been a follow-up with that, where that process is. You see, this past Saturday morning on my block, a car traveling over 50 miles an hour crashed head-on into another vehicle, causing injury to that occupant. Because cars and box trucks traveling in excessive speed is all too common on my wide street. My neighbors and I are asking for urgency in the status of the request for speed bumps. It is not a matter of if, but when someone will be gravely injured or die. If I or my neighbors do not hear back from the city this week 2 weeks from today, I will submit signatures collected once again from my neighbors on Gallant Street to the city clerk for public record so that there is a full transparency with this request. Thank you for your time. Mark Alamillo. That concludes public comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. If there's no objection by the City Council, I will close public participation. City Manager, would you please give your report?
Thank you, Mayor Barcena. Just real quick to address the email that was just read. We'll definitely get back to Mr. Alamillo. I know that street is in the queue for speed bumps, so we'll respond back with an estimation of time that it'll take to get that done. So we'll get back to them prior to the requester. It's a reasonable request. Also, I just want to note, it's been 3 weeks since the last council member, the way the council meeting, the way the calendar falls. So just want to acknowledge we had a successful spring Easter event a couple weeks ago. There was also a police department cleanup event that went very well. And since that time, the parks have been reopened. So skate parks, basketball courts, parks offices, things of that nature. So it's been a busy last 3 weeks, especially with spring break for the school-aged residents of Bell Gardens. I just want to comment on a few items that are coming up. This Friday at 9 a.m. at Ford Park, there's going to be a large food distribution. This is primarily sponsored by the County of LA and Supervisor Hilda Solis along with the city. That's 9 a.m. this Friday. It's first come, first serve. They're having no walk-ups, but it's a drive-up event. Also on Tuesday, April 20th, it's Earth Day. I'm sorry, Tuesday, April 20th is a Zoom-based tenants' rights workshop that's being put on by East Yards Community and a couple other groups. You can actually register that through the City of Bell Gardens calendar on our webpage. It'll link you to their site. So that's a tenants' rights workshop at 6 p.m. on April 20th. And then on Thursday, April 22nd, that's Earth Day, from 3:45 to 4:45, and also another session from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Those are PM. You can come and paint a birdhouse under the trees at Veterans Park. So check with Recreation Community Services to get ready for that. That's all I have, Mayor Barcena. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager, for providing us with your report. Now we are going to move to the consent calendar. Does any member of the City Council wish to pull an item for separate discussion from items 1 through 9?
I'd like to pull item number 7, the tobacco grant.
Okay, we have a request by Councilmember Flores to pull item number 7. May I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Chavez. We are gonna go ahead and do a roll call. Chavez,
Yes?
Cortez,
I'm sorry, this is a motion to pull the item,
Yeah.
correct? Not for the approval of
Yes.
the consent? Yes.
thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Pulido,
Yes.
thank you, and that's a yes for myself, so motion carries, and I believe this motion was also to approve the consent calendar, right?
I
No,
think,
sir, I'd recommend doing a separate
Okay.
motion for that, so I'll move to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item number 7.
I'll
All right,
second that.
Motion by Councilmember Cortez with a second by Councilmember Chavez. I will go ahead and take roll to approve items 1 through 6 and 8 through 9. Chavez,
Yes?
thank you. Cortez,
Yes.
Flores,
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pulido,
Yes.
and yes for myself. So items 1 through 6 and 8 through 9 are approved. And now we are going to go ahead and enter into discussion of item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to discuss item number 7 about the CDOJ Prop 56 tobacco grant. And the question's for you, Chief. Could you please explain to the community the importance of receiving this tobacco grant and what the process or what it is that you guys are looking to use it for?
Mayor, I'm sorry, Councilmember Flores, this is actually out of the Community Development Department, just respectfully. So I think
Okay.
Instead of the chief, it'd probably be Director Romo would be better to answer your question there.
Whomever. I just thought because I
Okay.
know the police department is going to be using some of the funds for the, for regulations. I thought that that would be, something that they would want to address, but whomever wants to answer the question is fine by me.
Director Romo, do you want to go ahead and start, and then we'll let the chief add in if there's any place that he wants to fill in, please?
Sure thing, sir. This grant is specifically to help fund code enforcement personnel, but also to help with code enforcement radios. So our consultant had let us know a while back that he would be looking for grant opportunities to be able to get us some radios, just like the police department has radios. We also need them for our code enforcement officers. So when Omar told me that there's also a possibility to fund personnel, we thought, wow, let's go for it. So we're looking at about 500,000, but we left it open because we could possibly ask for more. Does that answer your questions, Councilwoman?
It does. I just was wondering, Chief, did you want to add anything? You don't have to. You don't want to.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different than the grant we currently have that we're utilizing for education, making sure our businesses are following the rules and guidelines per ABC on selling of those type of items, and also for enforcement. We're able to put additional officers out on an overtime basis funded by that grant that allows us to focus strictly on locations like our parks where smoking is prohibited, and do some education and enforcement if people choose to continue with that type of behavior.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Director Romo. The purpose of my question was that the community is aware that grants like this don't only fund certain, what it sounds like, right? Just a tobacco grant. It also helps the different departments so that we may maintain the city afloat and not just regulating liquor stores. It's not what it is. It means it means making sure that everything's fully funded and that we're receiving funding for our departments, and we get creative as we possibly can. So thank you so much, Director Romo. Thank you so much, Chief, for using your creativity to making sure that all our departments are fully funded. Thank you, gentlemen. That'll be all for me, and I could go ahead and motion to approve this. Mayor Barcena.
Okay, anyone have any other questions or comments in regards to item number 7 before we move forward with the motion?
Mayor Barcena, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that this will be used for the community in terms of gathering better equipment, right, with radios and our code enforcement as well, taking some part of that, some of these funds. I think it's going to be vital to ensuring that the process for regarding tobacco or anything like that is important for our community to be educated and know what's going on and where this money's going to exactly. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Can I take that as a second?
Yes,
Councilmember
absolutely.
Chavez?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilmember Cortez and a second by Councilmember Chavez. Flores, I apologize.
No worries.
So I will go ahead and do a roll call, and we'll start with Chavez.
Yes.
Thank you. Cortez.
Yes.
Thank you. Flores.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Pulido.
Yes.
And that's a yes for myself. So item 7 is unanimously approved. And now we are moving into our discussion items. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item number 10?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Barcena. So what this item seeks is approval of side letter agreements with essentially all of the employees of the City of Bell Gardens, with the exception of the Police Officer Association, who already approximately 2 meetings back accepted a bargaining agreement or a side letter agreement. So this is for all of the non-POA employees. What this does is takes a look back and seeks approval to remove the 7.5% pay reduction that the bargaining units agreed to. In exchange for that reduction, they did receive furlough leave. Some of that furlough leave has been used, and in some cases they're
Mike, City Manager, I apologize for interrupting you, but I believe that we might have skipped over discussion item number 10. So I believe the one you're describing now is item 11.
Yes, Mayor Barson, I apologize for that.
No worries. I
it okay,
almost
Mayor, is it
wanted
okay
to
to
allow you to continue the item, but
Yeah, would it be prudent maybe because you already began the item to perhaps rearrange our items and just move forward with that one?
Can I
We-
have a legal counsel guide us on that? Can we continue with
Mayor,
item number 11?
Yeah, Mayor, members of the City Council, you can take this item before you consider item number 10. That's not a problem, as long as there's no objection by the City Council to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Please carry on, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Barson, and my apologies to Mayor Pro Tem and the rest of the council. Also to our employees too. So what this item essentially does is eliminates the 7.5% reduction and also pays out any remaining furlough bank. The reason for that is financial conditions have changed to agree that the major revenue source for the city is reopened. There's federal financial revenues coming along the way. And the matter of fact that these bargaining agreements are already generally coming up prior to the end of the fiscal year. So we're requesting approval, again, primarily to eliminate the 7.5% and pay out any balances. Doing so now, as opposed to waiting until July 1st, will save the city about $32,000 for a number of reasons. As people are receiving step increases or getting promotions, those leave balances become worth more than they are today. So it makes sense from multiple perspectives. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions in regards to item number 11? Would anyone like to facilitate a motion?
I'll go ahead and move for this item.
I'll second.
Okay, so it's a motion to follow staff's recommendation, and it's a second by Councilmember Chavez. So motion by Councilmember Cortez, second by Chavez. I will go ahead and do a roll call. Chavez,
Yes.
thank you. Cortez,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pulido,
Yes.
and it's a yes for myself, so motion carries to follow staff's recommendation. And now we are going to backtrack to item number 10, local commissions appointment list. And City Manager, want to take that on this time?
Sure. Thanks again, Mayor Barcena. The local appointments list, this is staff's recommendation that the council review the appointments list and by motion remove commissioners or make appointments to the vacancies that are posted. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have anything to propose?
Yes, at this moment, I'd like to appoint Laura Cortez to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Okay. Do I have a second for that? All right,
I'll
seeing-
second.
Okay, it's a second by Mayor Pro Tem Pulido, and I will take it to roll call. Chavez?
Yes.
Cortez?
Yes.
Flores?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pulido?
Yes.
And it's a yes for myself, so motion carries. Are there any other motions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on from this item to item number 12. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item number 12?
Yes, Mayor Barcena, thanks again. This item is seeking approval for the Community Stakeholder Priority Survey. We've got a PowerPoint presentation for this item that we'll pull up. While that's coming up, I'll just briefly talk about, we've got the upcoming budget preparation adoption process, and what staff is recommending here is really to enhance the public input portion of that process by creating and putting out a community stakeholder priority survey. And I'll go through the presentation here and touch on the major aspects of this survey, what the purpose is, and the timeline there. Silas, do you mind changing pages for me? Thank you. So the usual community stakeholder participation for the budget is public workshops, public hearings, council meetings. So with these type of public participation, stakeholder participation, you're open and you're ready to receive the comments, but you're really not pushing out that hard and asking specific questions. So people have to find time, have to find guidance and things are interested to make an effort to really put this information forward. And so there's value here. This survey is not meant to eliminate the need for these public workshops, these hearings, or the council members. Like I said, it's really to enhance that that stakeholder participation. The council are residents, your stakeholders, residents, stakeholders. So you have a good idea of what's going on, I think, before you even hear from these different avenues of information. And so this is really just opening up a new unadulterated avenue of information that should be helpful in this process and should be part of the mix of all the information that you have when you're making budgetary decisions. Next page, Hylas, please. So if you can look at it, it's really an enhanced stakeholder participation tool. The main purpose is a very narrow focus as we come into budget time, and it's to determine stakeholder priorities. We're going to use those priorities so that the council has additional direct information from stakeholders that may influence the fiscal year 21-22 budget process. When we say stakeholders, we're looking at a more global definition of stakeholders. So these are residents, whether they be renters, owners, businesses, property owners that may not be residents anymore. Maybe they used to be residents, but it's their parents' house that they rent out, and also nonprofit service organizations. Next slide, please. Generally speaking, the context of the contents of the survey, just some generalities here. It'll be bilingual, Spanish, English. It's got 7 questions. Some of them are optional: name, address, age, things like that. We'll ask for the respondent stakeholder type. That way we can slice and dice some of this information to help explain some of the results that we might expect to see. The bulk of the questions are really going to be related to requesting residents or stakeholders to rank city services into a priority listing. We're also going to have some open space for additional information so they can add in their own priorities, and they can actually put them into, name a priority that we may not have listed, and then also put it into priority order along with those that we've listed. Next slide, please. So I touched on some of these actual questions. The name, that's optional. Age is optional. Gender is optional. Address is optional. The reason those are optional is we want as much information as possible. And so while there is some value in, trying to do a hard verification of this information from residents, we don't want to restrict the ability for people to respond in a way that they may be concerned with responding in a way where they've given their name and their address for some reason. And so this would bring up the question of, well, what if people respond multiple times? And so we've got a couple of things I'll talk about here in the next few slides to help combat those concerns. Are you a Bell Gardens resident? That's not optional. We want to know that information. If you're, what version of stakeholder are you? We also want to know, have you rank the priorities? Next slide, please. So once you get through your name, address, all that, and those optional information, I think the real core of what we're trying to do here with the priorities list is what we've come up with are just looking at the existing budget, looking at the issues that the city faces. We've come up with 23 priorities. And I will share, I've talked with Mayor Barcena about this previous experience at another city. We used a similar process. We had about 50 priorities, which seemed to be too bulky and cumbersome, and there were some overlapping priorities. So we try to narrow this down to help give us a better result. And again, residents or stakeholders can add in additional priorities. These are not put in any order other than alphabetical, which is the way that they would be shown on the survey. So that's not to provide any kind of unintended bias in any way. We could randomly put them in, but I think this helps people at least a little bit identify the issues that they know. If somebody has an issue with homelessness, they're going to go right to H from a alphabetical perspective. So I could read through these. I think if everybody can take a look at them, again, they're not in what we believe the priority order. We just believe these are our major priorities. And so affordable housing, the aquatic center, city financial stability, code enforcement as relates to noise, business, residential, commercial development, so business development, community social services, community recreational services, crime prevention, public safety, disaster preparedness, the golf course, government transparency, graffiti removal, homelessness, parking, rent control, senior services, sidewalk repair, sidewalk street vending, street road conditions, so not the sidewalk, but the actual road that the cars are driving on, traffic pedestrian safety, speed bumps, speed humps, etc., trash and recycling, tree trimming, and water quality. And again, this is not meant to be 100% comprehensive, but if there are any major priorities that rise at this level, I think we can definitely make changes to this as the council sees fit. Next slide, please. The online survey, this shows a little weird on your screen here. So the survey primarily will be online. It'll be used through a SurveyMonkey account that we have. Again, it'll be in English and Spanish. We will also do paper surveys and make them available at city offices. And we'll also have drop boxes that are available in city offices as well. Next slide, please. What we're going to also do, I mentioned, I think a concern that everybody would have in a survey like this, where it's not restricted specifically by address or name, is that people could fill out multiple surveys. I think generally speaking, people are reasonable, and I think that we can have faith in the stakeholders in the city that while that may occur to some degree, I don't know that that would be something that happens in a statistically significant volume. But just to combat that, and as kind of a check, we'll also do a direct mail survey. So we'll select 100 random stakeholders based on a list of all the addresses in the city. We'll pick starting with the 18th one and then go through until we get to 100. And we'll keep them anonymous. This is similar to what we did with the parking survey. And so we'll send those direct. We would assume we'll probably get about 50% of those back, but these will be anonymous. So unless you just happen to know somebody that got one, which is unlikely statistically, if we only send out 100 out of 45,000 residents or more, it's unlikely. And I think it was pretty unlikely when we did the 1,000 surveys with the parking survey. So what we'll do is we'll compile these results separate from the online survey. And so the reason being is, statistically speaking, there should be very close similarities between the results from the direct mail survey as compared to those that come in from the online survey and from the paper survey. If there were material differences between the two, we could dive into the data to determine if it looks like there were any significant, surveys that were all filled out exactly the same with the exact listing of priorities, to see if there are obviously any issues there. We are going, I think, on faith to some degree here, but I think I know from the staff perspective, we believe strongly people are going to do the right thing with this survey, but this does give us a way of checking it to some degree as well. And so we'll present the results to the council from both of these perspectives here. Next slide, please. The time frame and results. So we're doing this all in-house. We're not using any consultants or anything. This is myself, our senior management analyst, Hyla Soto, and our two executive assistants, Monica Vargas and Annette Clark. So we anticipate, if this is approved by council today, we anticipate opening it this Thursday and leaving it open until Monday, May 3rd. The reason we're recommending closing on a Monday, May 3rd is we want to have this data and information available to council as soon as possible, so that you have the information to start making budgetary decisions. So we bring this back to you. Our goal is to come back at the May 10th meeting with valid data. So we'll get things set up as the data starts coming in to make sure that we're ready to present this on the 10th. That way you'll have time to really look at it, synthesize it, ask questions prior to budget workshops, etc. Outreach will be done through social media, city website, city offices. We'll also have a direct mailing. We also expect, council members will probably be putting information out there individually, as well as service organizations in that. And again, the results will be compiled and presented to council. Our goal right now is on the May 10th council meeting. Next slide, please. So we've actually got an embedded survey here. So it's a little light here, but you can see Hylas recorded himself filling out the survey. So you can get an idea of loosely what it looks like, how easy it is to complete. So he put in his name, he clicked the bubble for his age group, he put in a gender, other, he's putting in an address. He's restarting the video so you can see all that in one more time. And so here you can either select from a drop-down list, number 1 or 2, or also show, you can actually click on the priority and drag it around. So if you pick something that's at the very bottom and you click on it, you could drag it all the way up into the middle and drop it where you want it to be. So it's pretty intuitive. And then if you've got additional priorities, you can type it in down below before submitting. Next slide, please. So at that point, I hope that we've demonstrated we've put a lot of thought into this process, some previous experience, tailored it to try to get more fine-tuned results in a lot of good information with easy to answer questions in a short amount of time in a technologically advanced way, as well as offering paper and then doing a direct mail. So be happy to talk about the priorities that are listed and also to answer any questions about the process. Thank you, Mayor Barcena.
Thank you, City Manager. So I'm going to open it up for comments or questions from my colleagues. And if I call your name, it's not necessarily because I'm specifically asking you to contribute anything. I'm just trying to follow an order where I foresee a lot of discussion. So in this particular case, I'm just going to follow the order here and go with Mr. Chavez. Mr. Chavez, do you have any comments or questions?
Mayor Barcena, if I at the moment, I'm just kind of, intaking all the information presented. But I'll let you know if I do have any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cortez, do you have any questions or comments?
I have a comment. I want to commend staff for this item. When Mike brought it forward when we were discussing agenda, I thought it was a brilliant item. It's something I think that we talked about along when we were campaigning about finding a way to hear from the community in a direct manner. And at the time, I remember one of our higher elected officials had sent out a survey to the community to inquire about what their needs were, what they thought would be, best for the budget. And I think this is, it aligns with that and with that vision, but for staff to think of it and have the creativity with that direction of the council, I think that's commendable. And I do thank them for taking into consideration our vision and thinking of these items without us necessarily having to point them out. So I do want to commend staff for that. And I'm looking forward to these results. And hopefully it helps us with our intuition and what we know about our city.
Thank you, Councilmember Cortez. Councilmember Flores, any questions or comments?
Yes, I just wanted to comment, Mike. You said you're working with, in-house support, and I think that there's a lot to say about that. And it's just thank you. Thank you so much, because our residents really need this. Like Councilmember Cortez mentioned when we were campaigning, we did talk about having, town halls, or just ways to be able to reach out to our community so that they believe in our system and that they believe that we're here to support them and, listen to them. And this is a way for them to directly tell us what it is that they need. Whereas it's us, kind of guiding or giving direction to what we know or what we best feel is appropriate. So this is really, really beneficial to our constituents. So thank you so much, Mike, and for everybody else that's going to be participating in this. And if you're listening to this, please, if you will are that lucky golden ticket winner that receives this, we urge you to please submit that and tell us what you honestly think is important to you, because sometimes it's a small crowd making all this noise and it means nothing. It's what you guys really want. So if you get that golden ticket, please submit it back so that we know what it is that you need from your council to do for you. And that's all. Thanks, Mike. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Flores. Mayor Pro Tem Pulido?
No questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do have some questions in regards to this survey. I wanted to ask, is there a methodology involved in the random selection of the 100 stakeholders? And if so, can you describe what that method is in order to ensure that we get a fair representation of the residents of Bell Gardens?
Yes, Mayor Barcena. So what we basically do is we will take a list of all of the addresses, which I think there are about 10,000. It's a couple thousand plus or minus. And if we're looking to have 100 surveys that are sent out, so we take 10,000, divide it by 100, which if my math is right gets us 100. What we'll do is we'll randomly select. We'll use a random generator to select a number. Let's say it's number 22. So we'll start with that list. We'll start with number 22, and then we'll add 100. So number 22, number 122, number 222, so on and so forth. So There's really no, we did this with the parking survey and it seemed to yield good results. But that's the methodology that we plan on using. And so that would be an address. And so if you have a property owner there, the property owner would get that survey. If you have a renter there, the renter would get the survey. So it would be the resident of the address, not necessarily property owner or renter. It would be whoever resides there. So we think, just statistically speaking, that we should, it should be received by the appropriate percentage of renters versus property owners, just based on the methodology that we're using.
Thank you, City Manager. Now, in regards to the randomizing of these addresses and the selection process, is this done with like an Excel formula? Is this done with an online service? Maybe someone in the team here can provide an answer for that. I know it's a more technical answer, but I'm very interested in knowing, for transparency purposes, how these household addresses are selected.
Sure. So Mayor Barcena, honestly, we would either use, like you described, we're either going to use just an online randomizer or use an Excel spreadsheet. I think I would maybe pose back to the council, if somebody wanted to select the number, we can go with that. That would be as transparent as possible. So we'd be happy to go with that if you'd like.
I appreciate it, but in my opinion, I don't think that would be necessary. As long as we have something recorded that we are following a process that it's fair and that it truly does a randomization of the addresses. I think that's good enough for me.
Yes, Mayor Barson. We'll make sure that we document it. We'll report it back as part of the results report back to council as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then my other question, and this one is just maybe something that you might have thought about before, but I want to just put it out there. I noticed that the categories that you presented in the PowerPoint, as far as the ranking of the services that we provide, some of those services are very, very different from each other. And I was wondering if you considered at any point to categorize the services and maybe divide them into a small subset of categories.
Mayor Barcena, we thought about that. I don't think that we came up with a strong positive or negative against doing it. I think this was where experience came in. Just the personal experience or professional experience on my side of it was we did not put them into those categories. And I think the idea was just to keep them very free flowing. So people really thought about each one of these priorities independently, as opposed to somebody may otherwise look, and if they're really into recreational services and we have sort of a grouping that has recreational and social services, they may just not really look at some of the other categories and really just, hard rank all of those services, as opposed to if we just had them really out there where people have to take a minute to really read through the list because it's just alphabetical.
Okay, I suppose we can always do our own sorting of these services later, and that probably gives us more flexibility. So I see your point. All right. Okay, any final questions or comments from my colleagues?
Mayor Barcena, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I think within the first 2 months, 3 months or so, of being here, I wanted to have some sort of survey to align the vision of Bell Gardens with like sort of a strategic plan. And I mentioned this to Mike a couple of times and say, how can we take that information that we can gather from the residents and translate it into like a preparation plan for the next year, or to an extent a strategic plan that would be like a 5 years or so. And I'm glad that this got achieved through this community stakeholder survey. I think it's very important. My original question, and it was asked by Mayor Barcena, was in regards to in a case where a business were to receive the survey, right? How would that go about? And I'm glad to hear that, if it's a business that receives it, or a faith-based organization, in this case, a church or something like that, receives it, they have the opportunity to fill that out and provide their input on the survey. So I'm glad to see this is happening, and I think this is very important. I will say that, are we going to take the data that we gather from this survey? We're going to analyze it and apply what we get to draft sort of the budget within the next 2 months or so? Is that kind of like the idea?
Councilmember Chavez, it's more, I think this is more focused than that. I would more describe this as an additional piece of information among 20 or 30 other sources of information that the council would use to draft the budget. So this wouldn't be, like I stated earlier, it's really an enhancement. This would be another piece of valuable information among 20 or 30 other avenues of information or data points of information. So this is really intended to enhance, and to be fair, the results that come from this priority survey may align 93% with what would have otherwise been prioritized by the council. I think, again, as I stated, with you all being residents and stakeholders and knowing the community, I think there won't be material differences. There may be a few outliers here and there, but this would be one of multiple pieces of information to then be used to develop that budget.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. So I mean, that pretty much wraps up my comments. I appreciate that this is being done. I'm glad that this is also being done in-house. I think I was seeing the survey demonstration that Hy listed, and I think his recommendation was repaint City Hall. So maybe we should look into that. I don't know if any of my other colleagues got that, but I saw that. So I don't think that's a priority for people to pick, but who knows, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. So I want to thank staff for putting this together. I do want to emphasize on the transparency aspect of this, given that as we've listened in this particular item, it's extremely important to have like that random sample, because we're all going to be able to go out there and get people involved. But at the same time, we want to get an objective view of our population and their opinions. And I think the way to do it is with this random sample that we are going to be collecting, that we're going to be mailing directly to residents. So based on that, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to follow staff's recommendation, but maybe increase the sample to either 130, 150 or 200 instead of just 100. And I will go ahead and make that motion. I'll just bump it to 200 to send 200 to 200 households or stakeholder addresses to be selected randomly. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, that's a second by Councilmember Chavez. I will go ahead and take it to a roll call. And Chavez?
Yes.
Thank you. Cortez?
Yes.
Thank you. Flores?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Pulido?
Yes.
And it's just for myself, so motion carries with the only difference from staff recommendation being 200 randomized sample sources. Okay, and now we're going to move on to public participation. Public participation is now open for non-agenda items. City Clerk, are there any speakers?
There are no speakers for this item, Mayor.
Seeing none, if there's no objection by the council, I will close public participation. And we will now move to council comments, starting with Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mayor Barcena. So in regards to my comments, as Mike mentioned earlier, we did have a 3-week sort of gap, and it felt like a lot. This is my first time not having 2 weeks every bi-weekly meeting. And within these last 3 weeks, I will say that I myself have been somewhat pretty active, and I'm glad to see, in part because COVID rates are down. A lot of our community has gotten access to the vaccine, which is very important, and a lot of our community has been getting the vaccine. So I'm glad to hear that as well. So within these 3 weeks, so we had our Hoppy Spring Hoppy Spring egg hunt that was done by Recreation Services. Community Services. I thought that was an amazing event. I got to see a couple of the sites where we had different eggs, and different inflatables and whatnot. I think in the high school we had a dinosaur and like a planet Earth egg. Thought that was pretty cool. And then I think in Julia Asmus Park we had an egg roll. That was surprising, but I mean I'm glad to see that we had different eggs. So we had that event, and at the same time we had our BG cleanup. It was a collaboration between Bell Gardens and Century, the group. on Facebook, and then as well with our Bell Gardens Police Department. We had a pretty good turnout, and we got to clean up the streets in our community. You know, I remember that event. I really liked it. I think we should continually have that. I would say maybe we should be doing that at least every bi-weekly, every 3 weeks or so throughout the month, right? And we should continually come out and clean up our community every at least minimum 2 times a month. I think I'd really like to see that. So BG cleanup, that was really great too. And those events were both on March 27th, so so towards the end of March. And then following that, the last day of March, there was a drive-through event happening at Bell Gardens High School, and where we had Principal's Honor Roll. So I got to attend that, where the high school recognized some of the students who were on a roll, and I was really glad to be there. And you know, really how the school has been trying to be active during this distance learning time, right? This distance learning challenge. So I got to attend that, and that was a really great event too. Following that, it was April 1st. Big thing happening on April 1st, right? A lot of the basketball courts, the skate park, you know, a lot of things opening up. And I think another one was the Learning Center as well happening. And that same day, we had our mask and hand sanitizer event happening between the city of Bell Gardens and the Montebello Unified School District, in which we set up shop at Bell Gardens Intermediate. And we got to essentially give PPE, masks, hand sanitizers, and some school equipment to residents who had their children within Bell Gardens schools or the Montebello Unified School District. But it was tailored here to Bell Gardens, and I got to attend that. I got to volunteer that, and that was a really great event as well. Following that, I got to attend the skate park the first night that it opened. We had, I think a lot of our community was itching to get on that skate park. So I'm glad to see that it's open. And good turnout from our community. A lot of, I think it was right on time too, because a lot of our residents, you know, they just kind of tailored with the Unified School District schedule, in which spring break just happened right now, and everybody just had time to go out there and skate, along with basketball courts, volleyball courts, etc. And then also we had our learning centers open up. So this is something that the community has been really reaching out to me about in regards to learning centers. And I know from the top of my head, I think it's between 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. And there's like, the staff has developed a sort of schedule tailored to making sure that our students are getting the proper times to do classwork, homework, and at the same time have like recreational activities. So I'm glad to see that's going on, and that's already happening as we speak. And then following that, I think this last week, not this last weekend, the weekend before that, we had our food distribution happening simultaneously with our catalytic converter event. So really got to see that. We got a huge turnout for both events at our food distribution. We always run out of food, and we ran out as well. And glad to see that event went well. And then the catalytic converter event, we had the line just never got short. There was always cars lining up. And I really want to thank our BGPD for doing that, along with Mr. C's Towing, that we got to build that partnership and at the same time provide license plate sketching to residents here in the city of Bell Gardens. So some folks have been asking about maybe redoing that event or so. I don't know if that's in the works already, but I'd definitely like to see if maybe that opportunity comes along again. And then following that, do want to mention 2-3 things that happened throughout this week that I kind of saw, and I think a lot of residents had been asking and itching to see. One of the things was the street light on Garfield and Muller. So that's in operation. I'm glad to see that that's already occurring. And I just think it's something that our community really needed. Same thing with the street on Lubeck. I think it's Lubeck. The light is now working right there. We're next to El Pescador and Jack in the Box and Taco Bell and the furniture store. So that left street arrow is also working. So I'm glad to see that too. And then another thing is benches. So I went to our Ford Park, and I got to see about 3 to 4 new benches there set up. And I did a whole live video, and I think a lot of our community is happy to see that we got more benches at our Ford Park pond that we have there. So aside from that, that's all that happened throughout this. That's all that happened last week, and then this week, and then finally what's coming up. I don't know if I'm at the 6-minute mark, but I'll make it short. This final thing. So I think we have our yard sale weekend happening this weekend. So I saw that set up on the calendar. So yard sale weekend's happening. And then we also have, let's see, food distribution happening this Friday. Thanks to Supervisor Ila Solis for doing this for our community. And then we have our, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, tobacco workshop. So we're also going to have a tobacco workshop happening on the regularly planning commission scheduled. And that's at 6 p.m. So I want to encourage the community to come out, show up, give us your comments, tell us what you think about that. So that's happening during the planning commission at 6 p.m. on April 21st. With that said, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. Councilwoman Cortez.
Thank you. So I have a couple of points, and again, it's along the tracks of Councilmember Chavez to go ahead and commend our staff for all the things that have been happening in our city, and it's important to highlight these. I know there was some frustration with our parks not opening fast enough, if we could say it that way, but I do want to highlight all the work that our Parks and Rec staff has been doing, and also highlight that our Parks and Rec staff hasn't stopped from when the pandemic began. We were fortunate enough that we didn't lay off any staff, and our director has been doing a wonderful job in continuing the workflow. Not only that, but being very, very creative. So some of those things that I am very proud about is a couple months ago, we established that we were going to have learning centers. Unfortunately, with all the shutdowns, I think this was maybe done around last summer. With all the shutdowns, we weren't able to open, but this was done so that the students could have access to Wi-Fi, so that the students could have access to tutoring while they're doing remote learning. So now we are proud that finally one of our centers is allowed to be open, which is our Neighborhood Youth Center. And that's a great resource for our community, a great resource for our students. We also began registration for our youth baseball program. And to my understanding, for our little ones, it's going to open up in the summer. We have continued to offer daily nutritious meals for our students. Thank you, Parks and Recs, for offering this during the spring break so that our students could have a reliable place to come and get their meals. Our Parks and Recs department has also signed up our community members for vaccines on numerous occasions, including this past week. They're now collaborating for a massive food drive this week, which is going to feed about 2,500 families in collaboration with the county, with one of the clinics here in Bell Gardens. So thank you, Parks and Recs. They're also going to celebrate Earth Day on April 22nd. I encourage everyone to come out, or the kids to come out. And also super exciting, Mayor Barson and myself had the opportunity to take a tour or to do a walkthrough through our pool. And that is well underway. So I know we haven't had any updates, but I assure you that our pool is well underway and our director is working arduously to make that happen. And we will be having some updates soon regarding our pool, but it is happening. On that note, I also want to commend our Bell Gardens Police Department. We had a very successful cleanup. We cleaned multiple alleys, streets, and Chief, I do want to request a sit down with you so we could possibly coordinate the next cleanup, maybe in a couple of months. I did notice that some of our alleys and streets that we did clean up are already dirty. So we just ask the community to love your city a little bit. If you do have bulky items to be picked up, there is a line that you can call so that they can pick up your bulky items. That way we don't just have them out on the street or out in the alleys. We also had an etching event that covered around 150 cars, if I'm correct. So that was also very successful. But also along these 3 weeks, we also had a fire incident. And I do want to commend publicly our officers who tended to this matter, who helped to rescue some of our residents here in the city of Bell Gardens from a back house where there was no exit. They couldn't exit through their driveway. It was completely blocked. So they went in through a neighboring property. They broke down the fence to help these residents climb over. They helped these residents climb over. And there's a video that's been circulating that was posted by Fox 11, by our Congresswoman, and that we have posted through our social media pages. So I do want to commend their tenacity, their astuteness, their quick thinking, and their courageous actions. I know our community is grateful, and so am I. I know this is also not an isolated incident, but it is important to highlight the good work that is being done in our city and to offer the commendations necessary to all of our stellar employees. So Bell Gardens Police Department, and specifically to these officers involved in this incident, I do commend you for your actions. I am proud that we have you in our city, and I believe, and I want to say, and I want to speak for all of our residents, that we're very grateful for the actions that you took that day, because it was a matter of time, and you acted quickly, swiftly, without any concern to yourself, to your persona, and it reflects that we have a great department. So I do want to thank you for that. Lastly, our Bell Gardens Police Explorers are having their first Explorer meeting today. Welcome back. And we do want to encourage the community, our students, ages 14 through 21 to join our Bell Gardens Police Explorers. We do have excellent kids going to top-notch universities, USC, UCLA, that are enlisting in the military, that are accomplishing great things in the military. So if there's anyone that's interested in joining the Bell Gardens Police Explorers, just go ahead and email our Bell Gardens Police Department so that they can send you an application. And with that, I just want to say have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, Councilmember Cortez. Councilwoman Flores?
Yes, COVID vaccines, COVID vaccines, COVID vaccines. I feel like that's what I've dedicated my life to these last couple of weeks. You know, as we know, our communities have been disproportionately affected by COVID. Today, we have 109 Bell Gardens residents that have passed away from COVID, and the pandemic isn't over. Although things are certainly better, I can assure you that people are still contracting COVID up until today here in Bell Gardens. This past weekend, I spent Friday to Saturday morning in the ER in Downey at Kaiser, and I was with some doctors and nurses, and I noticed that they're still running on edge, still trying to live through that trauma that they just went through, and they're still overworked and understaffed. And in conversation with the physician, I had the great honor to thank them for caring for some of our residents and for literally holding some of the iPads up in front of them while they said their goodbyes to their family members. It was moving, it was very sad, and you know, distracting of the current situation that was going on at the time. So please, BG, I have to beg you to wear your masks, get vaccinated, continue to practice sanitizing lifestyles. And, you know, we have vaccines in Maywood, we have vaccines in Bell, we have vaccines in Downey. There are 3 vaccines that are available for all of our residents. If you need help, please give me a call. All of my business cards have my personal cell phone number. I pride myself in that. Where my husband calls me is where you can call me. It's the same number, it's everywhere. So give me a call. So if you need help, you know, getting vaccinated or securing an appointment. Also, a few weeks ago, I contacted a local clinic here in Bell Gardens to see if they could assist us with vaccinating our community. And I'm happy to announce that now they are not only just accepting Bell Gardens residents, but soon they will be accepting only Bell Gardens residents. They're going to allot certain vaccines so that no one in Bell Gardens goes without a vaccine. And I really want to thank Roseanne, who is our Parks and Rec director, who's been leading that, and she's going to be pushing for this, you know, for this awesome, you know, source that's going to come to Bell Gardens, and she's going to be pushing out information as it becomes available. Also, on the vaccine topic, I'd like to give direction to the city manager and staff to create an educational portion for our residents. We need to make sure our community members are receiving factual sound advice. I've heard crazy stories about the COVID vaccine, and it's really sad, and it's people prey on our community sometimes, you know, and I need you to understand that the best vaccine is literally the one that goes in your arm. That's it, just get vaccinated. So please, city staff and Roseanne, whomever, can please come together and create this for our community because we really need it. Also, to help our community tackle coronavirus, I'd like to implement necessary health orders in our city, and I'm requesting that we install soap dispensers and offer soap at all of our parks and rec, all of our parks restrooms. Please, I know we have sanitizing now, but now, you know, we're in a different place. So hopefully we can get that done as soon as possible. On Friday, April 2nd was World Autism Awareness Days, and an effort to increase and help the understanding and acceptance of autism and to foster citywide support, I'd like to request that at the next council meeting of this month, Mayor Barcena, we can make a proclamation to be made in honor of Autism Awareness Month. And lastly, sorry, I'm like still a little fluttered. So lastly, tonight, I'd like to give direction for something that I should have done a long time ago. On March 2020, last year, I had a baby. But before I left to do that, there were multiple conversations with both our city manager and our city attorney surrounding the need to place my medical condition on the agenda to be voted on. At the time, I reached out to, you know, a respected and well-known judge and spoke to them about my pregnancy and how it was going to be discussed on the, you know, council meeting. She was stunned and she asked me to not intervene in the process and let the city fail me. to make a public example of the poor process of cities and those willing to accept it to be discussed publicly. But I did speak to our city attorney, Rick, and I asked him to get it removed. So anyways, 13 months ago, I had to sit here in this very chamber and watch as then Mayor Cortez asked the council to take a vote on whether or not I would be granted to go on maternity leave. Regardless, the fact is that this conversation that took place was negatively historic for me. You know, it is evident that positions of power were not made for women, much less pregnant women. So today I'm requesting that we adopt an ordinance that would officially ban the need to bring any elected officials maternity leave or paternity leave to be voted on. As a local government, we need to establish non-pregnancy discrimination policies that reflect that of state laws and basic human decency. I feel that left unaddressed, we threaten long-fought women's rights, labor laws, and leave our city vulnerable to possible lawsuits of any women on this current or future council were forced to endure the process by which I was forced to. It is critical to all childbearing families that we act on this matter immediately. So with that, I leave you all with that note and have a good night.
Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Flores. Mayor Pro Tem Pulido.
I just want to thank all of our team members, our staff, for all of your work and dedication. You're truly a blessing to our community, and we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Pulido. I will now go ahead and do my comments in regards to Councilmember Flores' request for the autism proclamation. I think that's a great idea, and I will definitely look into that and see how I can make that happen. Thank you. And as far as my own comments, in regards to some of the heroic acts that our police department was involved with in the last few weeks, especially with the fire, I just want to commend our police officers and let them know that we truly appreciate their service here in the city. I've been a little bit more involved with the events that the police department provides to the city, such as the cleanup that they did in collaboration with Bell Gardens Uncensored. And I think that it's great that we have this team here in our city supporting us and providing the services that we feel are important to our community. And definitely keeping our streets clean is one of them. And even more so, having someone respond to disasters such as a fire. So we really truly appreciate the police department and all the work that you guys do over there. I want to talk a little bit about the skate park and say that I'm very happy that the skate park is now open. It has been a little bit of a challenge. However, I've seen good response from our team, especially Recreation and Community Services Director, Rosanna Danto, and her staff, as well as the police department. I've received comments from our residents that they've seen some of these officers out there in person and even probably skating in the skate park. So I think that's something you don't usually see, but nevertheless, it shows a very human side of our police force, and very happy to hear those reports. There's always room for improvement in everything that we do, and I want all of our residents to know that I don't take this position lightly, and I consider one of my main jobs here is to make sure that I hold staff accountable for their responsibilities and for the services that they provide to our residents. So I'm always watching out, making sure that it is being done properly, that we're getting our money's worth, because we spend a lot of money paying for these services. So we should get in return what we deserve and what is fair as well. So I take that very seriously, and I continue to do that every day, especially now as mayor. It's one of my main priorities to make sure that our residents receive the services that they deserve. But again, aside from that, regardless of my focus in this accountability, I do want to recognize that staff has been doing an amazing job. And as you've already heard from most of the board here, from most of the council members, it is not an exaggeration. It is not just us being diplomatic and making things flowery and sound great. I honestly do believe that we're doing a great job. And when I say we, I mean mainly the team that's in the front line, working hard every day. Our recreation leaders in the recreation department, our public works employees, our police officers, everyone in the city is trying to do their best. And the city continues to move like a well-oiled machine. And I really mean that because our services have really taken a different shape now. When I was a recreation leader, we basically didn't have a whole portion of community services. It was underdeveloped, to say the least. Underdeveloped, and now with the pandemic, we've reached another level where, thanks to the involvement of our director, we've been able to provide services that were just unheard of just a year ago. So thank you again, staff, everyone, for doing such a great job. I'm fully aware of it. However, I'm setting the bar very high, and I do expect continuous growth. So as we continue to move forward through this pandemic, which is not over yet, and as Councilmember Flores said, get vaccinated. I believe now we are seeing a shift of effort. Now it seems like there are more vaccinations available, right? However, now it seems like less people are coming out. So let's talk to those people that are in the edge, that they feel like maybe they don't need to get vaccinated. Let's make an effort to talk to them. Let's communicate with each other. Let's educate each other so that we can all get vaccinated and we can help remedy the situation and make it go away as soon as possible. I will bore you guys with more of my long speech here, but again, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the council, staff, and I hope that you guys come back for the next meeting with more public comments. This is one of the meetings that I've seen with the least amount of public comments. So I hope we get a little bit more involvement, but again, great meeting. Thank you, everyone. And I believe I have one comment from Councilmember Cortez.
Yes, Mayor, I do want to request from staff to bring back a clarifying item with respect to Councilwoman Flores' statement with regards to her item, just to clarify what the situation was at the moment. Just because I feel like some allegations were made tonight, and somehow I was looped into those allegations at the time I was mayor. So yes, it is my responsibility to bring every single item forward, including that item. Not that I arbitrarily brought that item forward. So if we just bring a clarifying item. Thank you.
I think what I said is that we need to adopt an ordinance that would ban anybody for having to bring their maternity leave to be voted on, because it's a threat to labor laws and it's pregnancy discrimination. So for clarification, that's what I'm asking for. But that's fine. You can bring that meeting. I had plenty of emails going back and forth with Mike that somebody was requesting even a time frame of how long I was going to be gone for.
Okay, I'd like to request for legal to take a look at the statements that were made in tonight's council meeting. I believe that in addition to holding staff accountable, we do have to hold each other accountable. And
Yeah.
from that perspective, I appreciate Councilmember Cortez's request to look into those statements, and I support that.
Do you
that
support?
request, and we are going to go ahead and have legal counsel look into that and get
Okay.
back to us on it.
All right,
All
I'll do that, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, everyone, have a good night, and thank you again for tuning into the meeting. Meeting adjourned.